show with Live with Daphne, I get to interview, that was really loud, right? You guys can hear that? I get to interview someone that I've known for a long time. She's actually one of my first sort of kind of clients when I opened up my boutique agency, Cafe and Laptop. Her name is Kathryn Han, and I cannot wait for you guys to meet her. So if ever you guys have questioned yourselves or inquired about plant-based medicine or what people now talk about as cannabis, legalizing weed, and just also, I don't want it to only be about that kind of conversation, but I want it to also be a conversation about how you can become one with yourself, love yourself, find out what makes you happy, and finding your purpose in life. So before we go into anything, let's get into the introduction so you can meet her. Hey,
that was amazing.
That was going to happen too. I forgot.
I didn't know all the visuals and the music would happen. I was like, ready. It's so nice to be here and see you.
Yeah, so just as a heads up, some of the little things that I didn't tell you, I'll be popping up little kinds of comments as people are coming on. I'll pop up some comments on the screen, but you'll be able to see them. But this is all about just everyone getting to know you. I love to have these conversations, especially with female entrepreneurs or females that are running their businesses, co-running their businesses, have an idea, they just that's a big passion of mine. So we are live today on Facebook and YouTube. So that's going to be really exciting. Before anything else, I also want you to know that outside of the questions that I'm going to ask you, people might ask you questions too.
Word.
All right.
Yeah. Sounds great. Sounds great.
All right. So do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kathryn Han. Daphne and I know each other we've known each other through our friend Dawn, and maybe it's been going on somewhere between 7 to 9 years-ish. And I feel like when we first met, I was in a really different business landscape. You know, I had first started kind of exploring this idea of teaching people around lifestyle habits around cooking. I had started a business called Tutorial to Table, and I was going into people's homes, like helping them do some like meal planning and prep, helping them plan for the week, teaching them some very basic skills. And in a place like New York City, there were actually like a lot of people who don't know how to cook. So I remember, you know, Daphne, one of her first workshops when she was kind of like beta testing Cafe and Laptop, invited me and Dawn to do a workshop together. And it was super insightful. And that feels like a long time ago.
When you said how many years, I was like, holy cow, was I pregnant with my last one? I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I met you before Cafe and Laptop, like as Cafe and Laptop was evolving. So I know that was like 2014-ish when we kind of probably did that, or 2015. But I mean, we've known each other longer than that. So you know, so a lot has evolved since then. Like the food meal prep and planning kind of evolved into, I was also concurrently really falling in love with cannabis. So I think more like falling in love with myself through cannabis. And so much of it was my exploration with the plant. I really wanted to start cooking with it. So I signed up for a cooking with cannabis class at the Brooklyn Kitchen. And I was really fascinated by it. And I also teach elementary school science. So very interested in like the properties and the benefits and how the plant interacts with our endocannabinoid system. So I started hosting these private dinner parties. So in addition to kind of doing some like private stuff with Tutorial to Table, I started catering and hosting these private cannabis dinner parties. And I got really interested in this idea of like, how could we create the ultimate sensory experience, you know, and how does cannabis enhance our sensory experience, whether that's like from a visual perspective, an audio perspective, a tactile perspective, and how can we experience it through a ritualized form of food and a dinner party, and in a way for some people who aren't comfortable consuming smoking, having a nice elevated dinner, and it's not like a skunky edible or a brownie, but we've low dosed it throughout the meal through whatever the fat soluble is. It really invited people to have a really interesting experience. So I really love that. And I was trying to figure out, well, what am I doing with these cannabis dinner parties? Like I'm throwing a great party. I'm inviting people to enjoy the plant. And I also started to find my voice through writing in that space. I was inviting people to these parties, but it kind of turned into this space where I was sharing my explorations with myself through cannabis, whether it was kind of like inspirational kind of ideas or messages or just like these empowering thoughts I had. But I think for those of you who intimately use the plant, you might experience that you have some of your most profound realizations, while high. And so I started to build, an audience, and I would go to different kind of like food and cannabis networking events to build my network and also to meet people who might want to come to my dinners. And that's when I met Mike, who's my current business partner through Fertile Soil that you can see at the bottom. And Mike was working at a Bon Appetit food event that I went to by myself. And I started chatting him up, and I always would have these lines to test out whether I think people would be interested in cannabis or not. Because I want to know, are these the right people to try and add to my email list, or is this no, not even interested.
And I have to stop you for a second. Okay, so guys, for you guys who are watching, I want you guys to hear how she is growing her business and doesn't even realize it. She's just chit chatting with people, trying to see, can I get to my email list?
Yeah, that's true.
But interesting though, you weren't even you didn't even have the idea for this business yet.
That's the most amazing part. That was I was in a completely different stage. So my business today, I could not have dreamed that I would have met my business partner through building my email list. That is the most powerful thing I've ever done. I literally went up to his table and I was like, are those look like psychedelic tartufos? And he was like, I wish they were psychedelic tartufos. And we just started to talk, and I was talking about the dinner parties that I was doing, and I added him to my email list, and we started to go back and forth. And at the time, he was getting certified in the Wim Hof method, like I was telling you before. And this is a certain type of dynamic breathwork and meditation and cold immersion. And you can Google Wim Hof. He's this Dutch guy who's done a lot of interesting things with his body and mind. And Mike was getting certified in this method. So when we were hanging out, he'd be like, hey, do you want to try some breathing? Do you want to breathe? And I'd be like, well, aren't we breathing already? And it was a little bizarre, but once I started to try out this breath work and stuff, I was like, this is physiologically kind of cool. I feel good. I physically feel good. I definitely feel like I did a little bit of traveling in my mind, and I've done some energetic work before, with a teacher and a healer. So I was like, this is kind of akin to sort of that space. But what I don't think I could have anticipated was how we were pairing both the breath work and cannabis and meditation together. And in that space, what we would be able to create, and I think in that space, it's I didn't realize how much clarity I would find there. I didn't know how easy it would be to kind of invite my creative genius along to write or come up with business plans or event plans or just different ideas. My brain was starting to access information that I had stored there in different types of ways. Mm-hmm. And so we started to kind of really explore this really, intimate, interesting space and how we could use it to really optimize.
Yeah,
it's so amazing.
So we
know each other.
By the person who actually introduced us. Okay. So thanks so much, Dawn. I'm glad you're watching.
Wait, Dawn. Gia is here. Okay, girl. Okay. Anyway, Dawn gave me that pipe when she moved. So that being said, we explored how these two things can really positively impact our nervous system, how it can really reduce stress, anxiety, inflammation, and really increase creativity, compassion, clarity. And I think there's a streamline through everything. It's we're all humans, we all breathe, and it's the one way that we can access our autonomic nervous system. So what would it be like when we were playing all of our roles, whether it was parent or teacher, colleague, boss, friend, daughter, sister, what would it be like if we were always operating from our higher self? What would it be like if we were operating from a place that was calm, that was collected, that responded instead of reacted? I think that would be a really exciting space for a lot of people to explore. So that is one of the kind of larger themes that we're sharing with people, is this idea that there are tools that we can use to access our higher self. There are tools that we can access this space where we can create a new future, and that we can visualize and we can get really creative with our fantasies and what we would like to ultimately build for ourselves. And so I really didn't know I would find all of this here. And we're still very much in the beginning exploration phases, but we have worked with I think each of us have worked with, hundreds of people, either through cannabis dinners or through these Wim Hof method workshops. And now with the workshops that we're hosting and events we're hosting ourselves and the private events that we're co-creating with people in different communities. And we've just heard time and time again that people are experiencing different breakthroughs. And one has been with, for example, a friend who's an actor, and he knew that he was experiencing some kind of like mental blockages, envisioning like the next kind of gig that he could manifest. And so we did some kind of specific breathwork and meditation around kind of like getting through those mental blockages and visualizing ourselves in that space. And it was so cool, like a couple of weeks later, to like get this text that he had gotten this big gig in Atlanta, and he was being flown out by BET for like the biggest acting gig. And he really attributed a lot of that to like some of the breakthroughs that he found in that space. And we've definitely spoken to other people who've had like these other kinds of like these experiences where they've been able to kind of travel in this past, present, future space and done some healing, where they've seen maybe some hurt or some trauma that was stored there, and they were able to kind of let it go, or they were able to imagine themselves in a space that hadn't happened yet, but they wanted to visualize what they would say in that space, whether that was with a partner or in front of a group of people. And so it's been really powerful. And we're really excited to, share the practice, and we're building our community here in Brooklyn, but also based in a few different locations, and those being Boston, the San Francisco Bay Area, LA. We have a little community in Portland and Seattle and the Berkshires. But it is our dream and our intention to go anywhere.
And one day when it's legal in Texas, you'll come and visit Texas too.
Absolutely. And, for the places where it's not legal, we're also just really information-based. We're information-based and experiential-based through the breath and through meditation and cold immersion, which is also an ice bath. We have this inflatable ice tub. Her name is Lava. She's like a doula tub, and we fill her up and we've put ice in there, and everyone takes like a 90-second plunge. It's optional. But like, it's an incredible thing to kind of get through the kind of like, fear that we have in that space, and sit through a fucking ice bath. It's like all you can really be is with your own bullshit. So it's like, once you get through that, you're like, what else can I do?
I did a spa, and we had to jump in this like ice bath, and I damn near died. So I don't understand how people
can take your breath away, right? You're like,
oh yeah, no. I died and I came back. Like, so
yeah.
I was like,
what happens is like your body's nervous system reaction is it wants to protect your internal organs. It's meant to. It wants to protect your heart. It wants to protect your lungs, your kidney. But so kind of through the training and through the practice, through like the breath work and through the cold immersion, is like we are willingly putting ourselves in a stressful state, that being the ice bath. And we are also willingly kind of breathing in a particular way that really increases like circulation in our body. So part of it is this idea is that we're telling our nervous system like, hey, I'm here willingly. I'm not going to die. We're not going to get hypothermia. I'm actually going to breathe through this. And so like, even though you're in this like really stressful state, like through your breath, you can actually really calm yourself. And it's really bizarre and amazing, the kind of space that you can access in that ice bath. It's like literally this transcendental kind of space where I've been like, after I get over my initial, like it's cold and I start to breathe and I get into this space, it's amazing how you can train your brain to register the feeling of cold as not fear, but just like a sensation, and like what you can experience through sitting through it. So it's just like imagine creating like a superhuman version of you through breath work, meditation, cannabis, or psilocybin, that being mushrooms, magic mushrooms. But these idea that these plant medicines and the things that we can also release in our body through our own breath and through our own mind could help us, function more optimally. Like, what would it feel like if we all had more time? What would it feel like if we all had more, I love that. Thanks, Todd. I have a picture of her in there. But it's something that really strengthens us. And one of the things that Mike always kind of shares with our participants is this idea that short-term stress equals long-term strength. So like even when we're working out, it's like, we're working out a muscle over time, but over long term where it's like we're gaining strength and endurance. And the same thing, like when we do something like we put ourselves kind of like willingly in a stressful state, and sit through that and breathe through that. And it's pretty tremendous. It's like, what you can kind of do on your own.
Well, I have two questions for you. The first one is easy.
Yeah.
Well, easier than the second one. Okay. So let's go with the first one. The first one is, okay, I hear how this journey kind of sort of happened, right? But how did you even figure out to put them together? I think that for most people, that's really amazing. Like, how do you, your education, your experience with cannabis, and this educative thing?
I think that one of the things that's lucky about both of the things that are like our specialty content area, mine sort of being cannabis and Mike's being breath and nervous system, strengthening our immune system. But this idea that we're fortunately kind of in a time where both like science and spirituality, this exploration of spirituality are sort of, it feels like they're on our side. There's a lot more because of like the legalization of cannabis in certain states. There are more scientific studies coming out that are showing the medical benefits, that are showing the benefits for anxiety, stress, cancer, PTSD. And same with the Wim Hof method. I think something that's special about the Wim Hof method is basically Wim Hof went to science, but he took a lot of like what already existed in spirituality, in terms of breath work, in terms of meditation, in terms of yoga. He's taken these ancient practices. He's developed a method that's based on these practices, but he actually went to universities and other places to actually say, like, okay, study me. Like, let's run some scientific studies. What's actually happening to our blood work? What's actually happening to, like our T cells? And so we're at a time where there's like more scientific evidence coming out that's supporting like, hey, this is actually benefiting our brains. Hey, this is actually benefiting our bodies. And I think that there's also like a space where people are really interested, not everyone, but certainly a larger amount of people that are interested in exploring their own self-optimization. And that often can relate to spirituality, can relate to their own inner journey. And I think that part of what Mike and I found with both of these content areas is that for us, it was the thing that we also really naturally wanted to give to the world. Like it's the thing that we like naturally feel most aligned doing in terms of like what we have to share and like our gifts and our skill set, but also it feels like it's what people need. It's like there's so many people I know who are stressed. There's so many people I know who don't have clarity on their vision of what the life they'd like to create. There's so many people I know who are reacting and not responding, and reacting and not creating. There's so many people who have this comparative narrative in their mind that their lives should be like this or their lives should be like this, when actually they could just create their own vision of what they would like for it to be. And I think that part of it is that we're so used to these kind of conditioned voices and messages of what already exists. And part of it is like, sometimes the model that we want to create doesn't exist yet. And that's kind of what Mike and I found. We were like, what the fuck is this? Like, we were like literally like hanging out and exploring these practices together. And we started to realize like, wait, the life that we want to create, the business we want to create, like, we were kind of like looking around and we were looking at this kind of blue ocean in a sense that like, oh, we found ourselves in this space where like, I actually don't see where it exists in this particular iteration, but we know that these things together can work to optimize because we felt it ourselves. And part of what we were talking before is this like feeling is believing, it's like, I can describe it, I can read about it, I could write about it, but until you actually feel it and experience it for yourself, it's kind of like, so part of what's so cool about what we're doing is that it is experiential, whether that's through the form of consumption of cannabis, which can alter your state and consciousness, or through the breath work and meditation and through the cold immersion, which really can like, which really just impacts, your nervous system and the way you can move through the world. It's like, it is a visceral feeling, and I think that when people can experience that for themselves, it's like,
and that's okay. So now, because it sounds as though you and I talked a little bit before we went live. So it really is about a feeling. You could read every book under the sun.
Yeah. And this kind of goes back to what we were saying about cannabis too, when people are like, hesitant about trying. Like there's a lot of opinions about what you can do in the health and wellness world, in the plant medicine world. And also that is just because the inundation of like the internet and information, like you can just like read anyone's work. And I think that one thing that is important is this idea of like cultivating trust. And trust with who you learn from, and that idea that the greatest teacher is actually yourself, right? So the idea of like you knowing your mind and your body and your spirit most intimately, and me knowing mine. And so for me, just me sharing the story of like, hey, like cannabis is a tool, and this breathwork and meditation are a tool that have helped me not only look inward, but unlock these kinds of like gifts and ideas and these passions that existed. So that being said, it's like, I think the biggest thing that we've really communicated to people is just giving people permission to try, permission to explore, permission to, like even just breathe in a room of people. Like I wouldn't have done this shit by myself. Like I wouldn't have just lied there. I wouldn't have gone, I'll be honest, I'm not the kind of learner that would go to wimhofmethod.com and download a video and do that. That's not how I learn. But because like this person in real life gave me permission to try, to explore, you know what I mean? I did. And I was like, whoa, this is a trippy space, and same with people who brought me to cannabis who were like, yeah, just like smoke a little weed, like just like see how it feels, like we're in a safe place, blah, blah, blah. And I have done that for so many people now. It's like I've invited them into an event, or I've invited them into the intimacy of my home, and I've shared a variety of products with them, but I've mainly given them permission. I've also given them information. So it's like people want information so that they know kind of scientifically what might happen or what could happen in my brain, body. But also just the idea of permission is like, I could try, because there's so many conditioned voices in our minds about like, say no to drugs, that's bad. We were talking about that earlier, or judgment around it, around people who use it. And also this idea of like, even breathing and meditating is kind of this weird woo-woo thing. Like I wouldn't have not been so open exploring myself in that way if I hadn't seen someone else do it first. Like Mike we would just like be in a public place, we'd like be at the beach or the park, and he would just like start breathing really loudly. And I was like, this is so bizarre. Like this is the most, okay, I'm just gonna sit here while you do that and let you go to that meditative space.
I probably would have walked away from him. I'd be like, oh.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I'm saying, like the permission. And so it was so bizarre, but once I started to join him in that space, I was like, oh, I see why you prioritize this space. Like, I see why you give yourself permission to go there whenever the fuck you want, because it's like in that space you're creating, in that space you're intention setting, in that space you're reducing inflammation, in that space, like, it's just like your reset button every day. You know what I mean? And so like, he was like, did not give a shit. And I was like,
okay. Okay. Next question. Now, this is the one that you and I talked about. Is weed bad for you?
Oh, it's so interesting.
I blurt it out because, and the reason why I asked this is because I know, like, we talked about how Facebook doesn't want you to market it. I talked about how, like, Twitter, one of the tweets that I read this morning, which I thought was really cool, was how many the death toll from weed or something, and it said cannabis is 0.
Yeah, it's true.
You have other people who are like, don't use drugs. It's burning your brain cells.
Yeah. I think that a lot of, this feeling around it being bad is like a kind of a older conditioned idea. Again, going back to this kind of say no to drugs, and also like based on really limited information. And this idea of reefer madness, like this connotation of like, you're going to act crazy, or you're just going to sit on the couch and do nothing. You're going to stone your couch like you're going to be a loser. So that's maybe why some people think weed is bad. You're like showing up to work with like blood vessel eyes, like just like stone glazed over. So I understand why certain people, or not certain people, why people can have like the impression of like weed being bad. But that being said, there are so many more studies that are coming out now about cannabis and also our endocannabinoid system. Are you familiar with that term?
No, this is for you.
Okay. Great. I'm so excited. That's so wonderful. So everyone has one. It's called the endocannabinoid system. And there are definitely medical schools who are finally starting to kind of incorporate the study of this system. And it was First, I guess I don't want to say identified, maybe identified and named by Dr. Meshulam in Israel. And he also named, so basically we have this system, and this system is essentially in charge of homeostasis. It regulates things like sleep, our appetite, our mood. So that's why when we smoke weed, sometimes it alters those things. We get the munchies, we feel calmer, we feel chatty, we feel open, because the plant, when we smoke it or when we ingest it, interacts with our body, with our endocannabinoid system. We have these receptors. And so the plant interacts with it. It's like, hey, we fit together. We bring homeostasis, we bring balance and or more. You can also release this endogenously in your own body through breath work. So those feelings of bliss and euphoria, have you ever heard anyone describe the runner's high?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they used to think that was like you're releasing endorphins in your body, but now they say that you're releasing your own cannabinoids. And your cannabinoids are those feelings, that molecule, anandamide, which is like the bliss molecule, which was named by Dr. Meshulam, who also is the one who authored the endocannabinoid system. It's like the same thing. So that's kind of like why we're so excited about like this breath work and plant that provides this feeling of bliss and euphoria. So that being said, the bad part, I think that like everyone kind of has to get past this like conditioned idea of what people Thank you. I've been waiting to share about this for so long. I've been learning and excited to share, so thank you. So that being said, I think that the more research that you do for yourself in terms of products, in terms of information, you're going to build trust in terms of that knowledge. And the only further way you're really going to build trust and know whether cannabis is right for you is if you try it. So, you know, it's like, who cares what your mama says? Who cares what your coworker thinks about whatever? I had to let go of a lot of people's judgment, or maybe it was just perceived judgment, to be honest, and what people thought about me when I really got real about my relationship with cannabis. I love it. It optimizes for me. It helps with my creativity, helps with my writing. I've been able to have some of my most compassionate ideas in that space. Helps with cleaning. I get into a meditative state with cooking. So for me, that's all value added. That's all positive for me. That's all good things that feel good for like my whole nervous system, for my whole body, for my mind. And so anything that I can add to my routine that's going to offer me more presence, that's going to offer me more patience, that's going to offer me more compassion, I will take it. And especially if it's not something that's going to be harmful to my body. So one of the things that you talk about is 0 deaths because of cannabis. So I want to talk about that a little bit. The one reason that is that we do not have, so people die from opioid overdoses, right? And that's because you have opioid receptors on your brainstem. And your brainstem communicates with your brain, and your lungs communicate, right? And your brain is constantly like, your autonomic nervous system is keeping you alive. Your heart is beating, your lungs are breathing. So basically, when you overdose on opioids, your brainstem is affected, and that communication between your brainstem and lungs is like, and that's why people overdose and they like stop breathing and they die. Cannabis, your endocannabinoid system, you do not have any receptors in that area. You have them in a lot of your organs. But so there's never that interruption. Like you can never overdose on cannabis. You might feel like you're going to die, but you're really not. You could have some CBD. You could come on back down. You could take a nap. You could have some food. And you can also try black pepper. It's kind of like a weird trick, but there's a terpene. I know so cannabis has all these kind of flavor profiles and these odor profiles. And so some of them, when you pair them, when you're like kind of too high, like I've tried ground cracked pepper and also just CBD isolate, and that can help bring you down. Some people have told me that's not scientifically proven, but I'll tell you anecdotally that it's true. And I've seen it with people. So, again, it goes back to like, a lot of times people are like looking to science, looking for information to validate their choices. And I think that's fine. And that's good. Get information, be informed as a consumer, especially with the products that you're trying, and then give yourself permission to try, but also choose the optimal setting for it. You know what I mean? A lot of people had a bad experience, had a big edible at like a crowded music festival and got really anxious. That sounds terrible to me. Have a microdose, go sit in the park, go sit in nature, watch a funny movie. think about maybe like reading a book or just like sitting with your thoughts, sitting with a friend, going to a cool museum, thinking about an experience that you might like to enhance visually, auditorily, olfactory, tactile, but even thinking about like, it's like, honestly, like exploring intimacy in that space. It's a lot easier. It's like sometimes when you get a little bit high, it's like you're just like a little more relaxed. You can step outside of yourself. You can step outside of all those chattery voices.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because one of the things we talked about was making sure that you have a safe space.
Yeah.
I think that when you go in depth and you do research, a lot of times that you find that these people had these crazy experiences.
Yeah.
Because the cannabis has been mixed with other things like
absolutely. So that goes back to being kind of an informed consumer.
Yeah.
My friends at Tribe Tokes, they wrote an interesting blog post called "What's in Your Vape," and it was really and they talk about vitamin E acetate and some of the other additives that people are experiencing with this vaping crisis. But it's like definitely be informed about your product. There are products out there that like have not been tested. You can ask people for a certificate of authority. Any cannabis company should be able to provide you with that. And that's the lab testing that's in their products. So definitely be an informed consumer. And then once you get a good product, then you give yourself permission to kind of like try in a safe space.
Okay. We're going to steer away from cannabis. I know people are going to be so disappointed. They're going to be like, oh my God, but I was really enjoying the conversation. All right. I want to talk about you as a woman in this space.
Okay? I love that.
Yes. Okay. Because there are lots of women, I think, who are either in this space, trying to get into this space, are really interested in it. How do they do it? Because like every other kind of booming profession or field, it tends to be men who kind of overpower that. And it's like, how do I find my little lane and chill in my lane?
Yeah. It's interesting. When I first started like kind of going around the cannabis network, I had first started like going to this networking group called High and Y, which later turned into Canna Gather. And then I found out about another group called Women Grow. And Women Grow was, founded by a woman in Colorado, Jane West. And she created this networking, like a community essentially for women who wanted to get involved in cannabis. And so men are welcome, but it's predominantly women. And in that space, I just started to go to events, and then I saw people on panels that I was like, it was important for me to see other women who also look like me. Like, one of the first things I remember this panel where someone I consider a really great dear friend, Lulu and Koshi, both founders of their own cannabis startups, they were sitting on the panel. One is Sri Lankan and one is Chinese. And for me to see other Asian women in cannabis was very important, okay? Like I was going to these events and, cannabis also like, on the West Coast, it's a very white space. Mm-hmm. And it was very important for me to see other people who sort of look like me, who were sitting in the front and sharing information, and were at the kind of forefront. And I wanted to know those people. So I would say that once you start to find people that you can identify with, go introduce yourself and just go be yourself. I introduced myself to both of them. Mm-hmm. I told them about what I was doing. I invited them to my events. I asked if I could add them to my email list.
By the way, you in that email list. Go ahead.
I'm telling you, Marie Forleo. Dawn put me on Marie Forleo, and Marie Forleo talks about this email list, and it has transformed me. And so where were we?
Oh, you met her. You went up to her. You asked her.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I met them. I went up to them and I introduced myself and I added them to my email list. And I invited them to my events and they became my friends. You know what I mean? And it was great to befriend them because they also gave me, that just to have a model. To have a model as a friend of like, oh, this is someone in my boss lady network who I can talk to for advice when it comes to like setting boundaries or setting intentions, or like, who should I talk to about this thing? Or can you introduce me to this person? Or what do you do before you speak in front of a group of people? I started to change like the people that I was surrounding myself with. And that was actually really important. I started to kind of, make some boundaries around spaces where I was like, I don't actually feel like being in this bridal shower. I don't actually feel like being at this birthday party. And I started to give myself permission to say no to those things, but devote my time to kind of seeking out other people that I wanted to be like, you know, and I think that's one thing that some people don't do. It's kind of like you're around the same group of friends and sometimes you're not evolving. And then you're kind of like in this toxic, stagnant space where you're just kind of complaining about shit. And you're like, this is not how I want to spend my time. I want to spend my time with people that I'm inspired by, people creating shit, people who have a shared vision with how they'd like to spend their life with like travel, interesting people, food, ideas, creation. That became a real value and priority to me. And so I started to create boundaries around that space. And part of that was kind of saying no to the things that no longer serve me. And then saying yes to all these opportunities that were just like, I think I'm supposed to go to that networking event. And that person is going to introduce me to this person. And you kind of just like follow this path. It's like what you said before. I didn't even know my business partner. I didn't even have that idea for that business until I was literally adding him to my email list and open to this conversation of something that could happen. You know, so I think that part of it is like really building your tribe, building your community, and being really selective about it. It's like, whose voices do you want to hear? It's like, do you want to hear that judgmental kind of criticizing comparative narrative? Or do you want to be with someone who's like empowering you to be like your best self? And who's also like, it was a priority to me to reach out to other women of color, you know what I mean? And to also refer other women of color, because I know how hard it is to kind of like get your own assets and resources. And like our network is definitely one of our most important resources as we're building as entrepreneurs. So that's definitely something I would say to other women, just like reach out to other women and you will find the ones who are open to receive you, and also be open to the idea of mutual mentorship. Bring something to the table. You know, it's like if you're asking for something, if you're asking for guidance in some way, what is your specialty? What can you bring to enhance someone's life? Like for me, I love when people can bring some kind of like social media advice, technology. I don't have those structures, but I can offer you something in terms of creativity, intention setting, reducing stress, clearer communication or relationships. So it's like, think about all the different life houses that you have and what you can offer, because, you know, it's like when you can create a relationship with another woman, which is that of mutual mentorship, where you're offering something and learning and you're teaching and she's also offering something, learning and teaching, it's like you just augment each other. And that's how you kind of like build your community, I think.
And I love how you said that, because that's something that I talk about a lot. I'm always like collaboration over competition.
Yes.
And especially with women, there are so few of us in these spaces, or there are a lot of us, but we have such a tiny percentage of the space.
Yeah.
And because we don't want to collaborate with one another, we don't talk to one another. And also, I think you brought such a great point when we talk about women of color. Like, holy cow. I remember even when I came into this space and it was like, this is what I want to help. This is who I want to find. This is who I want to talk with. And I couldn't find them. Like, I still go to, and it's not that I am disengaged with someone who doesn't look like me. That's not the case. But it's very different when you are in a space and you're always the one who stands out because of your difference.
Yeah.
Versus being able to connect with someone and they could mentor you. You're right. They could mentor you. Well, I don't know how to walk this space properly.
Yeah, yeah.
Whose foot am I going to step on? Who do I talk to for that?
Yeah, yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think like part of what we have to shift is our mindset about even just like abundance and scarcity, right? Because competition comes from this space of like lack or scarcity, or we think like someone else is going to be better than us. Someone else is going to have like the better idea. So I've got to do it faster or something, or I've got to be more innovative, whatever. But honestly, like we're really just creating a life for ourselves, right? So we're creating a market for ourselves too. You know what I mean? We're creating our own lifestyle. We're creating our own space. So it's like if we're creating, it can only be expansive. It can only be abundant. Only the people that I meet can only help me. You know what I mean? And if they're not helping me, then I'm going to make a boundary and I'm not going to have them in my life. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't need to compete with anyone except for myself. And, you know, that's something I have to remind myself often is like even like the timeline I create for myself and shit like that. And like my ego's like, oh, you gotta do this, all these plans that I make for myself. And I'm like, those are self-created, honey.
Yeah. I'm like, don't even do it to yourself, because I don't even set one up anymore. And everyone's like, oh my God, what about your goal planning? I'm like, look, I still have goals.
Yeah.
I am not going to have this in 6 months, I'm going to be on top of the world. No, I'm not. Like, if I am, cool. But right now, I'm not going to create these kind of larger than life kind of goals for myself, if that makes sense. I think because if I did, to be honest, if I did, my business wouldn't be where it is today, because I learned so much throughout my journey.
Yeah.
And it took me in different directions. If I had stayed on this one path, I'm not even sure if I would have continued doing my business. I'm not sure if I would even like my business. And think about it, you'd still be.
So maybe not goals, but you mean more like plans.
Yes.
More like plans. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying there, because if I had kind of stuck to even like some of the frameworks that I thought like tutorial to table is going to take me, I knew I didn't have clarity. You know, that's the thing. It's like when I first started business, it was like, okay, I have some skills. I have like, okay, like I can help people do this, you know, and then you're like getting more clarity on like, wait, what is it actually that I can like, you know, give and provide and serve with people. And so, you know, I think that part of it was like letting go of those plans, but more of kind of like, oh, this idea of like, oh, the ideas evolve, and it's good that they evolve because they get better. And then you take these different elements of like maybe what was there before, but you use it to create something else. So it's like, maybe it's not, maybe the idea is more like you're letting go of the larger plans because it kind of like helped you shift your business into the evolution that it is now.
Yeah,
and plan that.
I am going with the journey, and I'm accepting the journey.
Yeah.
So, because I don't know where this journey is going to take me. I don't know where I'm going to be 20 years from now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy. I don't think that it doesn't mean I'm not going to be successful. It just means that I am not creating a rigid wall around myself anymore.
Yeah. You know,
kind of like giving myself permission.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's like a real dance between like systems and frameworks, which are somewhat rigid, and then flexibility of like those things can change, like having like this foundation, this framework that's stable, and then also this idea of like flexibility and fluidity and flow. And I think like both of them are really important, and they kind of do this dance, and I'm still really kind of trying to figure it out, because we get really attached to our ideas. I get really attached to my ideas.
Do not
attached to my plans, including travel events that we're creating. But it's like part of it is being open to this idea of like the cosmic universe, because sometimes my plans are not the plans. And you know, and there also is this trust. There's this mantra that I've written about and that I share with people, and it's very simple. And I heard it from some.
I'm gonna put you right on.
Some workshop that I went to, I think at the Alchemist Kitchen in New York, and the mantra is this or something better. It's this or something better. And so this idea that when we have like a plan or an idea, that it's kind of like, okay, this one or something better. So the idea, if it's not mine, it's because like of this greater, larger plan. Like my original idea was tutorial to table. It was like teaching people lifestyle habits around cooking. And then it was cannabis dinner parties. And then it was like infusing plant medicine. Yes, this or something better. Plant medicine and breathwork and meditation to create like the optimal life that you want to live and love, you know? And so this or something better, I think it's a great kind of way to kind of like set an intention, kind of let it go, and then like not have too much attachment to the outcome, you know, because whatever the outcome is just part of the process.
And also, I mean, think about it. If you didn't allow yourself that this is better, something better, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing right now.
I know. I would be stuck like private chefing for rich people, probably. That's what I was going to turn into. I was doing like a lot of private clientele for like this nutritionist friend who had this like amazing plan and book. But I knew that it was starting to take me. I was like, is this what I want to do? Like, is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to do? And I wasn't finding that flow and alignment necessarily there. And I'm so grateful that I was open to like, maybe I'll take a cooking with cannabis class. Oh, this is it, you know? And then it was like, wait, this or something, you know? And it still kind of continues to evolve. Like I never could have dreamed like some of the ideas and the visions that we want to, you know, manifest. And I think that like, if we can be open to that idea of possibility, you know, if we can be open to that idea that there's this greater kind of cosmic journey, if we kind of keep committing to the process, if we keep showing up, if we keep learning, if we keep increasing and honing in on our skill set, and if we keep serving, and if we keep giving and using like our gifts to literally like uplift other people, like I think we can do anything.
We should be able to. We should.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question for you. So, you know, I got to ask the social media question, even though
I know. I'm so glad you're going to ask that.
Okay. So And I know that there are difficulties when it comes to your industry. So I would love to know how you are growing your business,
Uh-huh.
who are using social media to grow it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a very interesting relationship with social media. I haven't really been, for example, like on Facebook, maybe for about 5 years since I got married. If you look at my profile picture, it's probably when I got married when I was like 31. And part of that was for my own personal reasons. And then as I started to cook with cannabis and host these events, like I mentioned before, I'm also a public school teacher. So I wanted my identities to, in some ways, to remain anonymous and discreet. And I got really, like I told you, intimate with my email list. So now that my partner and I are in the process of building our business, the medium that we have chosen at this moment is Instagram. And the reason for that, to supplement our email list, is that we wanted to have a photo gallery space where people could get a feel for our events, so that they could, they could go to @fertilesoil.co and see like, oh, this is one of their breath and meditation events. Oh, this is one of the cannabis dinner parties that they hosted. Oh, this is a cold bath. Oh my God, that's an ice bath. I'm in an ice bath. And in addition to that, now we're kind of adding more of ourselves, which is to come. We just did our Instagram editorial calendar for this month. So starting to plan for just kind of like more inspiration, more of our personalities. Mike will definitely be doing some videos about like some cold immersion stuff, some rhinovirus stuff, and like strengthening our immune system, nature inspiration, some witchy stuff, some spiritual stuff. That's us there. So you can kind of get a feel for who we are in that space. And so through that space, we promote our events, we document our events, we share some inspirations, share some images for things that we're hosting. And we want to continue to kind of build it to share a little bit more about ourselves, I think. Some more empowering messages that we want to kind of engage with people on a more regular basis. So that's how we've been using.
Is that the cold bath?
Yeah, that's the ice bath. You see Jill? So Jill is a badass female business owned, in Black owned business in Crown Heights, a block and a half away from me. And she's the owner of the yoga studio there. And we partnered with her for an event, and that's in her backyard. And she has Lyme disease. And so the ice bath is really helpful for her inflammation and a lot of like joint pain that she has. And same with the breathwork. So that's been really powerful for like autoimmune disease, Lyme disease, lupus. So that's, there's, when you kind of go down the Wim Hof rabbit hole, like there's a lot of kind of medical and scientific things where they're doing a lot of studies for how you can improve your health. So anyway, that being said, we're using Instagram, and that's kind of where we are right now.
That's okay. I love
it. That's kind of where we are.
But the thing is, I even think about when you and I first met, and that was one of my things. I'm like, you got to focus on one first. Yeah. And I feel like your focus initially was your email list.
Yes.
So I know it's not technically social media, your email, right? But it's online.
Yeah, it is online.
It's a way to connect with people, because it really is about being authentic with people.
Yeah.
And I love your email list, because your email list, you are so personal. I was like, shit, emails that I read the whole thing on. Like, I don't read a lot of emails.
I appreciate that.
But because you are, for me, when I read your email, even when you did Tutorial to Table, I found that you connected with people. That was your ultimate goal. And social is. So creating a connection with people. You and I are having a conversation. Like, not once did I make it. I don't make it salesy. I'm like, hey, tell me about this, and tell me about, and that's what it's about. And I think you do that really well. So you started on your email, and then you went into Instagram. So I'm looking forward to seeing where you go next. I'm putting my fingers crossed for Twitter, even though we are on like Facebook. And so maybe I hope they don't get offended by that, but I'm hoping like.
I get it though, because of like the channel and the communication. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a huge, there's a lot out there on Twitter. There's like even like a huge hashtag cannabis community. There's also a bunch of meditation and yoga that on Twitter, which you don't.
Okay, cool.
as much. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because it definitely does exist in the Facebook world, but it's kind of what you and I talked about. You can't advertise. And so most people come on Facebook to advertise. And if I can't really advertise and share all of these things on Facebook, I'm just not really gonna do it.
Yeah, I get that.
All right, so next up, what was the next question? Hold on, I said I wanted to ask you about womanhood in this, because I do want to share your website, because one of the things that I love is you have a picture on there about like everyone is at the table, right? And I love that. And I'm going to be stereotypical here, and I'm going to be like, look, I thought cannabis was only like in brownies. I know.
No, absolutely, and that's a lot of people's interaction with it. It's like a brownie or a Rice Krispie treat. And yeah, you can see here, this is like a very kind of typical meal that we would share together. And generally I infuse the sauce. So cannabis can be infused into any fat soluble. That could be a butter, that could be olive oil, that could be coconut oil, that could be duck fat, that could be bacon fat. Girl, it can be any fat soluble, because the cannabinoids, THC, CBD, those things that we love, the things that make us feel high, the things that make us feel relaxed, the things that make us feel connected, those are fat soluble. So those cannabinoids can bind to any fat agent. So when you infuse the food together, or when you infuse the herb, you decarboxylate. You have to heat it up first. You know how you smoke it to heat it, like you activate it. So you do that. And then you can, I basically remove the flavor and the odor profiles of the cannabis. So some chefs will pair like the terpenes, the flavor profiles with the food to kind of like enhance the food experience. I kind of remove it completely, because I want people to have a really normalized experience eating. I want them to just taste the food. I want them to taste the food as it is. And then I want them to experience the enhanced effects as it's happening and kind of afterwards. And so when I do that, I feel like it normalizes the experience for people. They're eating and they like how they feel when they're eating, because they're like, this is yummy. It's not like a skunky edible or brownie. They're not like, this is kind of weird tasting. It's kind of, or it's like it's really smelly. And it's not just like a dense little sugary thing. It's like we've had a meal together, we've communed together, and now we're kind of collectively entering this space together at different times, because we have different metabolisms, we have different digestive systems, we have different endocannabinoid systems, we have different body mass, but ultimately we're sort of entering a space together because we've eaten this food together. And I also like to infuse sauces, because then people can kind of dose themselves. It's like I have a much higher tolerance for THC than someone who's trying for the first time. I don't want to take them to Pluto, but I want to go there, So, that being said, I think it's really important as you're exploring, and especially as you're eating, if you're consuming cannabis through edibles, is that you give yourself some time. It takes longer for it to ingest in your digestive system and for you to experience the high versus when you smoke it. So, it's like starting with 34 to 45 minutes, it can be longer. But, I can tell you stories and stories about the different ways I've infused it and the different experiences that I've had. But I think one of the things that we really like to bring to people is offering this kind of really normalized, ritualized experience, because we want to create a safe space for people to experience cannabis. Like we said, so many people have these ideas and judgments and fears around it and tell people that they don't want to use it. They're telling other people not to use it. But I'm telling you, like when some people who are either skeptical or unsure have tried my food, and A, they like the way it tastes, B, then they like the way it feels. In addition to that, I have literally had people tell me who have had like gastrointestinal problems that the day after my event, they have felt completely balanced. They felt good. They felt not only high, but they felt for the first time that like their like intestines and like BMs were feeling like balanced and cool. And that's something I want to continue to explore with people, like people using infused oils and butters for their own health regimen and routine. And in a way that's really normalized, in a way that feels really safe, and in a way that really enhances their, day-to-day experience. So I think that's part of it, really normalizing it for people to make it a safe entry point to try.
I'm going to ask you one last question, because I cannot believe we're almost at an hour. So here's the question. It is going to be about, how do you balance having a full-time job and starting and doing this, because this is something new.
Yeah.
And, that whole I'm going to call it a lie,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest. It's a lot. You don't need to quit your job to start a business. Like you really don't.
You know,
You don't want to because your business isn't gonna bring you a lot of money in the beginning.
yeah, your business is your baby. And so you don't want to put too much pressure on your baby when you're incubating it. That's the thing. I don't think people understand how precious that incubation time of growth and evolution is and how much time it does take to get a return on an investment. Part of that investment is yourself. It's like you're building the learning, you're building the network, you're building the resources. So for me, like I mentioned, I'm a full-time public school teacher. I've been teaching for 15 years. And, you know, thank you. I got very creative with my schedule. Part of it is I have a predictable school schedule. So I know when exactly my vacations are. And Mike, my business partner, and I have planned all of our travel and our work during those holidays, during those Jewish holidays that the New York City Department of Ed takes off, during, you know, the Christmas break, during the midwinter break, during the spring break, and I have a summer off too. So that certainly helps in terms of the structure of my full-time job. That being said, I also have gotten very creative at work. You know, it's like I've developed a really trusting relationship with my bosses so that I do deliver at work. I am trusted in my space and I do have the privacy of my classroom. So I'll be, you know, during my free periods of time, during prep periods, during lunch periods, I might be taking phone calls. I might be writing. I might be calendaring. I might just be visioning. But I'm using my space and my time in a very specific way. And part of that also required me cutting out other ways that I spent my time at work. That might have been listening to a friend complain. That might have been going on a walk. I mean it. You know what I mean?
But it's kind of like what you said earlier. You said you had to, part of this journey was also removing people.
And setting boundaries around my time and energy because that shit is sacred. When you want to create a business, your time is sacred and valuable. You have to get very creative with it. So for me, that was scheduling. I also got much more organized with my calendar. So I was scheduling my tasks for certain time periods and also understanding my energy levels and my brain optimization levels, like when I do certain tasks more optimally than others. And at the end of the day, after teaching, I'm exhausted. You know, it's like I have over 300 students. I have 4 to 6 classes a day. I'm talking to kids of all different age groups all damn day, girl. So at the end of the day, my energy levels are not really in the right space for my creativity, for like my writing, but they can do certain things, you know? But part of it has also been this like breathwork and meditation and all of this other stuff. It's given me a lot more energy to do my work. So I've been able to kind of work more efficiently and creatively in those time periods. But I would say that it's not really about kind of slaving away and working harder and late into the night. To me, it's about producing high quality work. And if that high quality work takes longer than I planned, I'm going to be teaching longer than I planned. Because part of it is I know that I want to manifest abundance. And in order for me to manifest abundance, I can't be feeling lack or scarcity or pressuring my business baby to return something that it's not ready to return yet. You know, we're still cultivating our ideas and our services and our events, and we're in the process and we're certainly growing. We're definitely growing. We're definitely having meaningful experiences with people. We're co-creating community in different cities together, and it's awesome. But that being said, the stability, the human resources from my job in terms of my healthcare, in terms of my paycheck, all of those things, that stability is really important for my creativity. I would not want to put that pressure on my business baby because then I would be saying yes to things that might be making me money but aren't in full alignment with what I want to do, that are a distraction from what I'm really trying to create. You know what I mean? So part of it is being really intentional with that. And I am so grateful for my full-time job right now because it does take care of like my basic needs and my stability. And that allows me to dream and to create in a way that I wouldn't be able to if I was like, this needs to pay me right now. This needs to pay me the full same salary that I used to have. That takes time to cultivate, you know, those revenue streams. And I imagine this is going to be my next chapter. I'm not going to have a boss again. You know, I'm not gonna work in an environment where I have to like clock in again or I have to ask for time off. I'm not gonna have that again. So if I'm cultivating that next chapter for myself, I want to ensure that I'm doing it meticulously in a way that I'm setting myself up for tremendous success. And that also means like working in a way that feels really good, aligned, feeling abundant, feeling grateful, feeling energetic. And I need to have all my bills and my healthcare paid for that. You know, like all those other things, my rent, you know, all those things. I need to have those things taken care of in order to feel all of those things and to manifest those things too. And I think a lot of people, for some reason in the entrepreneurial world, it feels like there's like some kind of like race to make it your full-time gig, like to make this your identity. And I don't want to participate in that because that's just too much pressure for all of the kind of creation. You know what I mean? I want it to flow and come naturally. And the only timeline we're creating is our own. Like, literally. I have to tell myself that almost every day.
You have to. And like, it's absolutely crazy because I know being in the online space, because my business is in the online space, all of my clients, hey, Daphne, do this for us on Facebook, do this for us. I literally have to put blinders on because if I look at what other people are doing, you end up feeling like,
yes,
why am I not doing that?
Yes. And it's and then Mike and I call that the comparative narrative. And it's like all of like the guilt manipulations, all of the shoulds. I should be doing this. I could be doing this. I should be doing blank. Look at what this person's doing. And it's like, I've talked to people about this before, about like getting selective with your consumption, because otherwise those voices, they just kind of implant into your space and you're like, oh, why am I not doing this? I should be doing blank. This person's doing this, but it's like very much like, but you're creating your own space. You're creating your own timeline. You're creating your own vision. And if you're comparing too much, you're not really creating. You know what I mean? Like you're not really being original and authentic if you just kind of keep thinking, I should be doing, you're just comparing,
And then you wasted so much time. The next day comes on and you're just like, all the work I should have done yesterday, but I was sitting there comparing myself. Yeah. Now I have that to do. I have today's work to do. Yeah. Now I'm stressed out and I need to go to Fertile Soil so that she can teach me how to meditate. And
totally create more space to get into the flow state with your work and boundaries. Yeah.
Created like a whole new audience for you.
I'm so excited to be tuned into and connected to your audience because I think that honestly, it's a tremendous space for entrepreneurs. It's a tremendous space for anyone who wants to create their own lives, and that includes workspace, relationships, where we live. And it's a through line that if we can optimize the way that our minds and our bodies work, and if we can work more efficiently and more creatively, we're going to have more time. We're going to have more connection. We're going to have more abundance. And it's like, that's ultimately what we're trying to create, right? We're not trying to create a really stressful life to pay for our bills. And we're just like an entrepreneur, but we're like these maniacal working all of the time. Like, that's not the life I'm trying to create.
Like, that is not why I created this. Exactly. Yeah. That is not why I created this. The whole point of me creating this was that I could stop being that way.
Yeah. I'm not going to be a slave to someone else's schedule. And not a slave to my own crazy ass schedule. It's like, no, I want to delight in the schedule that I created for myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, girl. We are at the hour.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so good connecting again. I don't know if that's what I'm saying, but she was like one of my first people. Just throwing that out there.
I know. And I remember sitting there with you thinking like, wow, Daphne's really going to help people grow their businesses. And that's so awesome. That's what you're doing.
I'm still doing it. Every now and then, I still kind of amaze myself. Like, I had a meeting today and people were talking to me and they were like, you really know your stuff. And I was like, yeah, I really do know my
It's good to pause and to relish and to be like, no, I did spend time accumulating these skills and this knowledge set. Yeah.
It felt really good. So before you go, I want to make sure that I have your website.
That is correct.
So everyone can see it. If you guys are in the New York area, please make sure to shoot her an email. Trust me, she loves getting people on her email list. So that's a great way to connect with her. And any final thoughts, girl? I'm going to put you on here. So your final thoughts.
Thank you. I would say that my final thoughts are that we can cultivate, our mindset to have the optimal, we can cultivate our mindset optimally so that we can kind of manifest whatever lives that we'd like to create, and part of that is creating a safe space to visualize, a safe space to fantasize, a safe space to communicate with our higher self, to articulate that vision. And we can give ourselves permission to explore different tools. That includes, maybe breathwork, meditation, cannabis, plant medicine, but also, permission to go meet that person. You know, one of the things that we talked about today was creating your network and your tribe and finding other people like yourself doing what you're doing. So give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to introduce yourself. Give yourself permission to try something new. Give yourself permission to not judge yourself in trying something new. And I think, you know, just remember that you can access your higher self through all of these tools that we have. And I'm excited to meet some of you. And thank you so much for having me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.